2.6 miles wide, May 31st, 2013, near El Reno, Oklahoma, EF3. Yet instruments inside the storm, they recorded wind speeds exceeding 300 miles per hour. That's EF5 territory. That's beyond what most tornadoes ever achieve. And here's the part that sends chills down the spine of every storm chaser. For the first time in history, the people trained to study these storms, the experts who dedicate their lives to understanding nature's most violent phenomena, didn't walk away. So, buckle in, because for the next hour, we're going minute by minute through the most dangerous tornado in storm observing history. We're going to explain the science, show you the radar data, walk through the timeline, and answer the question that needs answering. A stationary front draped across the state like a tripwire, and from the west, pushing east, a dry line, that invisible boundary where dry desert air collides with Gulf moisture. By mid-morning, meteorologists at the Storm Prediction Center were looking at numbers that made them sit up straight. CAPE values, that's the measure of atmospheric instability, were exceeding 4,000 joules per kilogram. At 3:30 p.m. Central Time, the Storm Prediction Center issued something they don't issue lightly, a PDS Tornado Watch. PDS, particularly dangerous situation. Let's step inside the National Weather Service office in Norman, Oklahoma. It's late afternoon now. The operations room is buzzing. Forecasters are hunched over computer screens, watching radar updates, analyzing model data, communicating with spotters in the field. But one storm, the southernmost cell, is different. It's sitting right at the intersection of the front and the dry line, the perfect spot. And the rotation signature, it's strong. In Oklahoma, where tornadoes are a fact of life, many people choose the car. The highways start to swell. Traffic builds. Most people picture a tornado as a single funnel, right? A cone dropping from the sky. And sometimes that's accurate. These subvortices, they're invisible on most radar. They're hidden inside the larger structure. And they can reach wind speeds that defy belief. While the overall tornado might be rated EF2 or EF3 based on the damage it leaves behind, the radar can measure the winds aloft. The Doppler on wheels, the RACS pole mobile radar, these cutting-edge instruments can sample the velocity inside the storm. Keep that in mind. We'll come back to it. Back to our timeline. It's 5:33 p.m. The tornado warning is out. The highways become parking lots. Interstate 40, Interstate 44, the side roads, the back roads, all clogged with vehicles creeping along, trying to get ahead of the storm. Led by Tim Samaras, a brilliant engineer and storm researcher. His goal? Deploy instruments directly in the path of tornadoes to measure pressure, wind, and moisture. Data that could save lives in the future. 6:03 p.m. Central Daylight Time, 8.3 miles west-southwest of El Reno. The tornado touches down, and then contact. The ground erupts, dust, debris, the first violent suction of air meeting Earth. We've got a strong tornado on the ground. Let's talk about what expansion means in tornado terms. Most tornadoes reach a peak width and maintain it, or they cycle. They shrink, they grow, they shrink again. It's rare for a tornado to continuously expand over a long period. The mobile radar teams, the Doppler on wheels and RACS pole, are sampling the velocity inside the storm, and what they're seeing makes their jaws drop. El Reno was matching it, maybe even exceeding it, but inside a structure so large, so complex, that the violence was hidden. But El Reno? It started doing something that had meteorologists and chasers calling each other on the radio, voices tense, and the speed, that's the killer. At times, El Reno's forward motion was relatively slow, maybe 15-20 miles per hour. Chasers could keep pace, could maintain safe distance. Your safe distance? Gone. Your escape route? Cut off. And the mobile radar teams, they're stunned by what they're measuring. 2.6 miles. El Reno just shattered it. But from the outside, from a car window a mile away, all you see is rain. But El Reno, it was rain-wrapped. And then you notice the rain is moving wrong. It's not falling straight down. It's curving, swirling. Multiple storm chasers that day reported the same thing. We didn't see it until we were in it. At this point, multiple vehicles are in the wrong place. And then, the sub-vortices. These internal whirlwinds, hidden inside the rain, are crossing roads, crossing paths, and they're moving fast. Not just spun around, not just tipped over, lifted and thrown 200 yards. Others weren't so lucky. At the same time, farther south near Reuter Road, another vehicle is struck, and then another. They turn onto a narrow gravel road, and the tornado, sensing its prey, almost accelerates. Roads going east, west, north, options. Because if the tornado shifts, if it speeds up, if the visibility drops, you need to be able to get out. And when you're on gravel in heavy rain, you can't drive fast. 30, maybe 40 miles per hour maximum if you're pushing it. Any faster, and you risk sliding off into a ditch. But then, the tornado doesn't move northeast. It jogs southeast, directly toward them. The tornado is no longer behind them. It's no longer to their west. It's on top of them. That's 133 miles per hour of pure rotation. Not wind speed, rotation. The entire mesocyclone is spinning like a demonic top. Each one of those cores, a separate whirlwind capable of EF4 or EF5 damage. Multiple internal vortices converge on a small area. The rain is so heavy, the visibility so poor, that nobody can see what's happening. And then, silence. When the rain clears, when the tornado finally moves on, the search begins. Paul Samaras, 24 years old, Tim's son. Filmmaker, passionate about following in his father's footsteps. Gone. But they weren't the only ones. Richard Henderson, an amateur storm chaser, 35 years old, and civilians. People who were just trying to get home, trying to get to safety, caught and killed. The National Weather Service would later call El Reno the most dangerous tornado in storm-observing history. And they weren't exaggerating. People who woke up that morning with plans, with loved ones, with dreams, and by nightfall, they were gone. While the main tornado was tearing through Canadian County, something else was happening a few miles to the southwest. In the northern hemisphere, tornadoes almost always spin counterclockwise. It's a function of the Coriolis effect, the rotation of the Earth. Counterclockwise rotation is the default. This anticyclonic satellite tornado touched down near Yukon, Oklahoma. It was rated EF2, significant but not catastrophic. The mesocyclone, the rotating updraft at the heart of the storm, it was so powerful, so chaotic, that it was spawning mirror image vortices. At 6:43 p.m. Central Daylight Time, 40 minutes after touchdown, the El Reno tornado finally lifts. 16.2 miles of devastation, farmland shredded, power lines down, vehicles destroyed, 500. Imagine that. Imagine hundreds of cars trapped on a highway with nowhere to go, as a 2.5-mile-wide monster bears down on them. Meteorologists watching the radar in Norman saw the velocity signature weaken. The hook echo on the radar, that classic sign of tornadic rotation, it smoothed out. Because while the tornado was the headline, while it grabbed all the attention, all the fear, another killer was just getting started. We're talking about a storm system that had been drawing moisture from the Gulf of Mexico for hours. A storm with an updraft so powerful, it was lofting that moisture 6, 7, 8 miles into the atmosphere, where it condensed, froze, melted, and fell. I am 60. But it wasn't falling everywhere. This wasn't a gentle, widespread rain. It was training. That's the meteorological term for when multiple thunderstorm cells move over the same area in succession, like train cars on a track, cell after cell after cell, each one dumping 2, 3, 4 inches of rain in less than an hour. The ground couldn't absorb it. The storm drains couldn't handle it. The creeks and streams couldn't contain it. and suddenly, roads became rivers. In Oklahoma County, in the eastern outskirts of Oklahoma City, the calls start coming in. Water's rising fast. We're trapped in our car. The current's too strong. We can't get out. Emergency responders are overwhelmed. They're already dealing with tornado damage reports with search and rescue in El Reno. And now they're getting dozens, then hundreds of water rescue calls. Some intersections have 3, 4, 5 feet of water. Cars are floating. People are drowning. And here's the cruelest irony. Some of the people who died in the floods, they were evacuating from the tornado threat. They left their homes, got in their cars, tried to drive to safety, and got caught on a flooded road in the dark. By the time the sun rose on June 1st, by the time the water receded and the full scope became clear, 13 people had drowned. 13. More than the tornado killed, but the floods didn't get the same attention. There were no dramatic videos, no mobile radar data, no National Geographic specials, just quiet tragedy. Families receiving the worst possible news. The final toll for May 31st, 2013. 21 lives lost. 8 to the tornado, 13 to the floods. 1 day, 1 weather system. 21 futures erased. In the days following the disaster, a controversy erupted that still generates debate among meteorologists today. On June 4, 2013, the National Weather Service issued a preliminary public information statement, and in that statement, they used the term EF5. They cited the mobile radar data, wind speeds exceeding 300 miles per hour, extreme violence. They made it clear this was an EF5 tornado. The news media ran with it. Headlines screamed, EF5 strikes El Reno. Comparisons were made to the deadliest tornadoes in history. But then, something changed. The official damage survey teams went out. They walked the path. They examined every structure, every tree, every piece of infrastructure the tornado had struck. And they found surprisingly limited damage, not because the tornado was weak, but because it had crossed mostly open farmland. There weren't many buildings to destroy. The ones that were hit, mostly barns, outbuildings, rural homes, and they didn't meet the EF5 damage indicators. Here's the thing about the Enhanced Fujita Scale. It's damage-based, not wind-based. You don't rate a tornado by what the radar measures. You rate it by what it destroys. To get an EF5 rating, you need to find specific types of damage. Well-built homes swept completely off their foundations. Entire structures debarked, pavement scoured from roads. And El Reno, for all its violence, for all its power, it didn't produce that kind of damage, because it didn't hit the kinds of structures that would show that damage. So, on June 5th, the National Weather Service issued a revised statement. Final rating, EF3. Maximum winds estimated at 295 miles per hour, based on mobile radar, but official rating based on damage, EF3. The backlash was immediate. Storm chasers, researchers, meteorologists, they were furious. How can you call this an EF3? We have measurements, we have data, but the National Weather Service held firm. The EF scale is a damage scale. We don't rate tornadoes based on mobile radar. We rate them based on what they destroy. And technically, they're right. But it feels wrong, doesn't it? It feels like we're diminishing what happened. Like we're saying, oh, it was only an EF3. When the reality is, this was one of the most violent tornadoes ever documented. Period. The rating doesn't capture that. The number doesn't tell the story. And maybe that's a problem with the scale itself. So let's answer the question we've been circling this entire time. What went wrong on May 31st? How did experienced storm chasers, people who'd been doing this for years, end up in the path of a tornado? It wasn't one thing. It was everything. First, the size. 2.6 miles wide. When a tornado gets that large, the normal rules of safe distance break down. You think you're 3 miles away? You might be inside the circulation without realizing it. Second, the rain wrap. The tornado was completely obscured by precipitation. You couldn't see the threat. You were navigating by radar and instinct, and both failed. Third, the erratic motion. The storm didn't move in a straight line. It jogged, it turned, it zigged when it should have zagged. Chasers were positioning based on predicted paths. And the tornado said, "Nope, I'm going this way instead." Fourth, the speed-ups. At times, the forward motion nearly doubled. If you're on a gravel road and the tornado suddenly accelerates from 20 to 40 miles per hour, you can't outrun it. And fifth, the most insidious factor of all, velocity aliasing. Let's talk about Doppler radar for a moment. Radar works by sending out pulses of energy and measuring how they bounce back. When that energy hits something moving, like raindrops or debris in a tornado, it causes a frequency shift. The radar can detect that shift and calculate velocity. How fast something is moving miles toward or away from the radar site. But there's a limit to what the radar can measure. It's called the Nyquist velocity. If something is moving faster than the Nyquist limit, the radar gets confused. It wraps around and displays the velocity as lower than it actually is. Think of it like an old-fashioned odometer that rolls over at 999 miles. If your car has 100,000 miles, the odometer might show 0,000. The same thing happens with radar velocity. On May 31st, some chasers looking at base radar velocity data would have seen relatively moderate velocities, maybe 60, 70 knots. But in reality, with velocity aliasing taken into account, the real velocities were 100, 120, 150 knots or more. Mobile radar teams with specialized algorithms could de-alias the data. They knew how strong the winds really were. But chasers in the field, looking at standard radar on a laptop, they were seeing underestimated winds. They thought they had time. They thought they had distance. They were wrong. And here's the hardest truth of all. Even if everything had gone right, even if the tornado had been visible, moving predictably, with perfect radar data, people still might have died. Because at the end of the day, we're human. We make mistakes. We miscalculate. We hesitate at the wrong moment. Tim Samaras had chased tornadoes for 30 years. He'd deployed probes in dozens of storms. He'd survived close calls before. But on May 31st, every factor aligned against him. Wrong road, wrong timing, wrong turn, wrong storm. One decision made in the chaos and confusion of a chase. And that was E.T. There's no villain here, no negligence, no recklessness. Just a storm that was smarter, faster, and bigger than anyone anticipated. Nature, reminding us that for all our technology, all our understanding, all our confidence, we are still incredibly fragile. In the weeks and months following May 31st, 2013, the meteorological community went through something it had never experienced before: soul-searching. Conferences were held, papers were written, debates raged on forums and in university halls. The question everyone was asking: how do we make sure this never happens again? But here's the problem with that question. It assumes we can prevent it. It assumes that with enough technology, enough training, enough rules, we can make storm chasing safe. And El Reno proved we can't. Not completely. Not when you're dealing with forces that can generate winds exceeding 300 miles per hour. Not when you're dealing with storms that can expand from 1 mile wide to 2.5 miles wide in a matter of minutes. Not when you're dealing with nature. But that doesn't mean we learned nothing. Far from it. The data collected on May 31st, the mobile radar measurements, the video footage, the survivor accounts, they gave scientists the most detailed look at a violent, large tornado ever recorded. And that data? It's saving lives today. Let's talk about what the mobile radar teams captured. The Raxpol radar, operated by researchers from Texas Tech and the University of Oklahoma. It was positioned almost perfectly, close enough to sample the internal structure, far enough to stay safe, and what it saw revolutionized our understanding of tornado dynamics. For the first time, scientists could see the complete three-dimensional structure of a violent tornado in unprecedented detail. The multiple sub-vortices, the way they formed, merged, split apart, and reformed. The incredible wind speeds inside these smaller whirlwinds. The Doppler on wheels, operated by Dr. Josh Werman's team, captured complementary data from a different angle. Together, these datasets provided a stereo view of the tornado's internal workings. Researchers discovered that the sub-vortices weren't just random chaos. They followed patterns. They had life cycles. They could be tracked, measured, understood. One paper published in Weather and Forecasting by Dr. Howard Bluestein and his colleagues. It used the El Reno data to develop new algorithms for detecting rapid tornado intensification. Another study looked at the relationship between tornado size and internal wind distribution, how wide tornadoes can have higher maximum winds in subvortices than the parent circulation. This isn't just academic, this is operational. Warning meteorologists today use these findings to better communicate tornado threats, to identify which storms are likely to produce large, violent, dangerous tornadoes. But the most important change, it wasn't in the science, it was in the message. Before El Reno, tornado warnings were relatively straightforward. A tornado is approaching. Take shelter immediately. After El Reno, the National Weather Service realized they needed to be more specific because people were making dangerous decisions based on incomplete information. They were getting in cars. They were fleeing on highways. They were putting themselves directly in harm's way, thinking they were escaping. So, the language changed. Now, warnings explicitly state, do not attempt to outrun a tornado in a vehicle. Now, they emphasize, if you're in a sturdy building, stay there. Your car is not safer. Now, they use impact-based warnings, not just, there's a tornado, but this tornado is large and extremely dangerous. Complete destruction possible. Mass casualties likely. Take shelter now. Words that cut through the noise. Words that communicate urgency and reality. And it's working. Studies since 2013 show that fewer people are attempting to evacuate by car during tornado warnings. More people are sheltering in place. More people are taking the threat seriously. El Reno taught us that how you communicate danger can be just as important as detecting it. Within the storm-chasing community itself, the response to El Reno was complicated. Some chasers quit. They said, if people like Tim Samaras can be killed, what chance do I have? They hung up their cameras, their radars, their dreams of documenting nature's fury. Others doubled down. They said, we owe it to those who died to continue the work, to learn from their sacrifice. But everyone agreed on one thing. The culture needed to change. In the years before El Reno, storm chasing had become crowded. Social media had democratized it. Anyone with a smartphone and a car could call themselves a chaser. And some of them, frankly, had no idea what they were doing. They'd see a tornado on radar and just drive toward it. No escape plan, no understanding of storm motion, no respect for the danger. They'd clog roads, block emergency responders, take insane risks for the perfect Instagram shot. El Reno forced a reckoning with that behavior. Experienced chasers started speaking out. This isn't a game. This isn't entertainment. If you're not trained, if you don't understand the science, stay home. Some advocated for licensing requirements. Others pushed for self-regulation, a community-enforced code of conduct. And while the debate continues to this day, one thing is clear. Storm chasing post-El Reno is more cautious, more thoughtful, more respectful of the forces at play. The cowboy era, the era of get as close as possible and hope for the best. That era ended on May 31st, 2013. Let's circle back to one of the most crucial lessons from El Reno. The roads. In most disaster scenarios, roads are your friend. They're escape routes, evacuation corridors, the path to safety. But with tornadoes, especially large, fast-moving, rain-wrapped tornadoes, roads can become traps. Think about it. You're in a vehicle. Your visibility is limited. Your speed is constrained by traffic, road conditions, weather. The tornado, it doesn't care about roads. It doesn't stop at intersections. It cuts across highways like they're not even there. And if you're on that highway when it crosses, you're in a metal box, with windows, with no protection. The people who survived El Reno by staying in sturdy buildings, they had cuts, bruises, trauma, but they lived. The people who got caught in vehicles, the statistics speak for themselves, so the lesson is clear. And it goes against every instinct we have. When you see a tornado coming, when the sirens sound, when your brain screams, run, you need to do the opposite. You need to stay. You need to take shelter. Basement if you have one. Interior room, lowest floor, no windows. And if you're caught outside, if you're on the road, do not try to outrun it. Get out of the car, find a ditch, lie flat. Cover your head. It's not perfect. It's not safe. But it's safer than staying in that vehicle. And while we're talking about safety misconceptions, we need to address the overpass myth, because it kills people. There's this persistent belief, spread through word of mouth and outdated advice, that highway overpasses are safe tornado shelters. The logic seems sound, right? Concrete and steel, elevated, solid. But the reality is the exact opposite. Overpasses create a wind tunnel effect. The tornado's winds are compressed as they flow under the structure. Speeds increase. Debris gets funneled into the exact space where you're huddling. Projectiles traveling at 150, 200 miles per hour, aimed right at you. And the elevated position, it puts you higher in the wind field, where winds are typically stronger. On May 31st, multiple people sought shelter under overpasses, and emergency responders had to rescue them from injuries caused by debris strikes and wind. They were lucky. In other cases, people have died. The National Weather Service, NOAA, every reputable meteorological organization, they all say the same thing. Do not shelter under an overpass. If you're in a vehicle and a tornado is imminent, get out. Get away from the highway. Get as low as possible. An open field is safer than an overpass. A ditch is safer than an overpass. Anywhere is safer than an overpass. This myth needs to die before more people do. Let's return to that counterfactual scenario we mentioned earlier. What if the El Reno tornado had maintained its eastward track? What if it had continued toward Oklahoma City, toward Interstate 40, at 6:30 p.m. on a Friday evening? Computer models, traffic data, population density estimates, they all point to the same horrifying conclusion. Hundreds of fatalities, maybe more than 1,000 injuries. Picture this. Interstate 40, bumper-to-bumper traffic. People trying to evacuate. Nowhere to go. No way to turn around. And then, a 2.5-mile-wide tornado, with subvortices spinning at 300 miles per hour, crossing the highway. Not just crossing it, sitting on it. Because the tornado's width means it would cover multiple exits, multiple miles of road, all at once. Vehicles would be thrown like toys. Tractor trailers would become missiles. The debris field would be apocalyptic. Emergency responders couldn't have reached the scene for hours. The highway itself would be impassable. This scenario, this nightmare, almost happened. The tornado shifted south by maybe 3 miles, 5 at most. That's it. That's the margin between tragic and catastrophic. And it's why traffic evacuation is now considered one of the worst responses to a tornado warning in urban areas. Stay put. Shelter in place. Don't add yourself to the body count. Remember that velocity aliasing issue we discussed? The radar wrapping around and showing lower wind speeds than reality? After El Reno, that became a priority fix. The National Weather Service upgraded their software. They implemented better de-aliasing algorithms. They trained forecasters to recognize the signs of aliasing and correct for it in real time. Mobile radar teams refined their techniques, higher pulse repetition frequencies, dual polarization, multi-pass sampling. And they started sharing their data with operational forecasters during active events. Before El Reno, there was a wall between research and operations. Mobile radar data was for scientists, for papers published months or years later. After El Reno, that wall came down. Now, when mobile radars are sampling a tornado, they can relay real-time data to the National Weather Service. Velocity measurements, debris signatures, structural changes. That information goes directly into warnings. It informs decisions about warning extensions, upgrades, emergency management responses. It's not perfect. There are still delays, technical challenges, coordination issues, but the principle is established. The data collected in the field belongs in the hands of forecasters, while the event is still happening because minutes matter, seconds matter, and every bit of information that can help people make better decisions saves lives. So, here's the question. In the decade plus since El Reno, have we seen another tornado like it? The short answer? No. There have been violent tornadoes. There have been large tornadoes. There have been deadly tornadoes. But nothing that combines size, speed, erratic behavior, and intensity, the way El Reno did. In 2013, the Hattiesburg, Mississippi EF4. In 2019, the Beauregard, Alabama EF4. In 2021, multiple violent tornadoes during the December outbreak. Each one terrible, each one tragic, but none of them were El Reno. And that raises an uncomfortable question. Was El Reno a fluke, an outlier so extreme that we may not see its like again for decades? Or was it a preview, a glimpse of what's possible in a changing climate, with warmer temperatures loading more energy into the atmosphere? Scientists are cautious about drawing conclusions. Climate and tornado research is complex. The data sets are limited, the variables are enormous, but there are hints, suggestions, concerns that the conditions which produced El Reno, the extreme cape, the tight boundary interactions, the incredible wind shear, those conditions may become more frequent. Not every year, maybe not even every decade, but more often than they used to be. And if that's true, then the lessons of El Reno become even more critical, because next time, we might not be so lucky. Let's take a step back. Let's summarize what actually changed after May 31st, 2013. First, communication. Warnings are more specific, more impact-based, more urgent. Second, public guidance. The message about not evacuating by car is now front and center. Third, research integration. Mobile radar data is now shared with operational forecasters in real time. Fourth, storm chasing culture. More caution, more respect, more accountability. Fifth, radar technology. Better algorithms, better de-aliasing, better detection of rapid intensification. Sixth, training. Emergency managers, broadcast meteorologists, storm spotters, all trained on the lessons of El Reno. And seventh, humility. An acknowledgement that for all our technology, all our understanding, nature can still surprise us. That's not a failure. That's reality. We've made incredible progress in severe weather forecasting. Lead times for tornado warnings have increased. False alarm rates have decreased. We save thousands of lives every year through timely warnings and public education. But we can't save everyone. We can't predict everything. And when a storm like El Reno comes along, a perfect storm of size, violence, and circumstance, sometimes people die. And we have to live with that. We have to learn from it. We have to honor those losses by doing better. But we also have to accept that perfect safety is an illusion. In El Reno today, if you drive south on Highway 81, you'll find markers, simple crosses, plaques, flowers left by visitors, memorials to the 8 people who died in the tornado that day. Tim Samaras, Paul Samaras, and Carl Young have a memorial together. Their contributions to science, their passion for understanding, their ultimate sacrifice, remembered. Richard Henderson has his own marker, a life cut short, a family forever changed, and the others, civilians caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, they're remembered too. Every year on May 31st, people gather: storm chasers, meteorologists, family members, community residents. They stand in silence, they share stories, they cry, and they look at the sky, that same sky that can be so beautiful, so serene, and so deadly. There's a lesson in that memorial, a lesson beyond the science, beyond the warning systems, beyond all the technical improvements. The lesson is this: we are small, we are fragile, we are temporary, and the forces we study, the storms we chase, the phenomena we try to understand, they don't care about our degrees, our experience, our good intentions. They simply are, and we must approach them with respect, with caution, with the knowledge that we are guests in their domain, not conquerors, not masters. Guests. Let's talk about the people who survived encounters with El Reno, because their stories matter too. Mike Betts, the Weather Channel meteorologist. He was back on air within weeks. Injuries healed, but the psychological scars, those take longer. He's talked about it in interviews, the nightmares, the flashbacks, the moment of absolute helplessness as his vehicle was lifted and thrown. But he's also talked about gratitude. Gratitude that his crew survived. Gratitude for the medical teams who treated them. Gratitude for another chance. Other chasers who were close to the tornado that day. They've shared similar sentiments. Some quit chasing immediately. The trauma was too much. The risk no longer worth the reward. Others continued, but differently. More cautious, more prepared, more aware of just how quickly things can go wrong. And the families of those who died, their stories are even harder to hear. Tim Samaras' family established a foundation in his memory, supporting science education, encouraging young researchers, keeping his legacy alive. Paul Samaras' friends remember his passion, his creativity, his love for the storms he filmed. These weren't reckless people. They weren't adrenaline junkies with a death wish. They were professionals. They were careful. They were unlucky. And that's perhaps the hardest truth to accept. Sometimes, doing everything right isn't enough. So, why do we chase storms? After everything we've discussed, after the deaths, the destruction, the danger, why do people still go out into the Great Plains every spring, looking for tornadoes? The answers are as varied as the chasers themselves. For some, it's the science, the data, the opportunity to study phenomena that still hold so many mysteries. For others, it's the beauty. Because tornadoes, for all their violence, are stunningly beautiful. Nature at its most raw, most powerful, most pure. For others still, it's about service, providing real-time reports to the National Weather Service, helping to confirm warnings, saving lives through ground truth. And for some, it's something deeper, something almost spiritual. Standing in the presence of a tornado, you're confronted with forces that make human concerns seem trivial. Your job, your stress, your petty problems, they all vanish. In that moment, you are utterly, completely present, focused, alive. It's terrifying. It's humbling. It's addictive, but El Reno taught us, or should have taught us, that addiction can be fatal, that the line between respectful observation and dangerous proximity is thin, that nature doesn't reward bravery, it doesn't respect experience, it simply acts, and we must act accordingly. It's been over 11 years since May 31st, 2013. The farmland where the tornado crossed has regrown. The damaged homes have been rebuilt or torn down. The roads have been repaired. If you didn't know what happened there, you'd never guess. The sky looks the same. The fields look the same. Life goes on. But the data remembers. 2.6 miles wide. Winds exceeding 300 miles per hour. 8 lives lost. The families remember. Empty chairs at dinner tables. Birthdays celebrated with one less person. Holidays forever tinged with sadness. And the community remembers. Storm chasers, meteorologists, emergency managers, they carry El Reno with them, in their protocols, in their caution, in their respect. If there's one lesson, one overarching theme, that El Reno teaches us? It's humility. We have incredible technology, weather satellites that can see storms from space, Doppler radar that can measure winds inside tornadoes, supercomputers that can model atmospheric dynamics. We have dedicated professionals, brilliant scientists, skilled forecasters, brave storm chasers. But we do not control the weather. We do not dictate when and where tornadoes will form. We cannot guarantee safety. All we can do is observe, learn, warn, prepare, and respect the fact that nature is, and always will be, more powerful than we are. That's not a weakness. That's not a failure. That's reality. And accepting that reality, embracing that humility, that's what keeps us safe. That's what honors those who were lost. If you drive through El Reno, Oklahoma today, on a clear spring afternoon, the sky looks ordinary, blue, peaceful, dotted with fluffy white clouds. Children play in yards, farmers work their fields. Traffic moves steadily along Highway 81. It's hard to imagine, standing in that peaceful landscape, that just over a decade ago, this was the site of nature's most extreme violence, that the air itself became a weapon, that the horizon turned black, that 8 people took their last breaths beneath that same sky. But that's the thing about tornadoes, about severe weather, about nature. It doesn't warn you with changed colors or permanent scars. The sky doesn't look different in places where terrible things have happened. It just looks like the sky. And that's perhaps the most important lesson of all. The danger doesn't announce itself. It doesn't wear a sign. It doesn't give you time to prepare. One moment, sunshine and peace. The next, chaos. May 31st, 2013, El Reno, Oklahoma. 6:03 p.m. to 6:43 p.m. Central Daylight Time. 40 minutes on the ground, 16.2 miles of path length, 2.6 miles wide at its peak. The widest tornado ever measured in the United States. Wind speeds exceeding 300 miles per hour in internal sub-vortices. Official rating, EF3 based on damage. 8 tornado fatalities, including 4 storm chasers. 13 flash flood fatalities that same evening. 21 lives lost in total. 151 people injured. Countless more, forever changed. But here's what the numbers can't capture. The little boy who lost his father and grew up to become a meteorologist himself, determined to understand the storm that took his dad. The emergency manager who changed protocols and saved lives in the next outbreak because of lessons learned from El Reno. The chaser who quit after May 31st. And now teaches storm safety to school children, reaching thousands with a message of caution and respect. The researcher who analyzed the radar data and developed algorithms that are now used in every tornado warning across the country. The forecaster who was working that day and carries the weight of every decision, every warning, every word, using that weight to become better, more precise, more effective. That's the legacy of El Reno. Not just the loss, not just the tragedy, but the change, the growth, the determination to ensure that those 8 people did not die in vain. The sun sets over Canadian County, Oklahoma. The same fields that were torn apart on May 31st, 2013, are now golden with wheat, swaying gently in the evening breeze. A memorial stands beside Highway 81. Flowers, photographs, names carved in stone. And above it all, the sky. That beautiful, dangerous, infinite sky. The same sky that can bring life-giving rain and death-dealing winds. The same sky that we study, chase, fear, and respect. 2.6 miles wide. 40 minutes. 21 lives. 1 lesson that echoes across the years, across the prairie, across every storm season that follows. Nature always wins, but we can learn to survive it.